Olivia Carter arrived at the wedding in a quiet and graceful way. She wore a white blazer over a soft dress, and her golden shoes shone in the warm light of the ballroom. Ozzy Horace's wheelchair moved gently across the floor, making almost no sound. The hall was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Round her, couples were dancing, friends were hugging, and families were sharing stories. Yet Olivia felt as if she was standing outside of it all, watching life pass by without her. She had worked hard for everything she had. People knew her as a strong businesswoman, a young CEO who had built her company with determination. Many admired her for her courage and her sharp mind. Still, none of that could cover the loneliness that followed her. Success could fill her days, but at moments like this, when she sat alone at a table for one, it reminded her of everything she did not have. Her eyes wandered across the room. She saw a group of friends taking pictures together, laughing as they leaned close to each other. She saw a bride and groom at the center of the hall, glowing with happiness, surrounded by family. Olivia clapped softly with the others, but her smile faded quickly once the moment passed. It was not that she disliked weddings. She liked them. She liked the beauty, the joy, and the music. What she disliked was the empty chair beside her, the silent reminder that she was alone. She adjusted her blazer and reached for her glass of water. Her fingers trembled slightly, though she tried to steady them. She told herself she was fine, that she had chosen this life, that independence mattered more than company. Yet deep inside, she longed for someone to share even the smallest moments with. The weight of that longing pressed on her heart as she looked at the dance floor again. Her mind drifted back to earlier years when she thought love would come easily. Back then, before her accident, she had believed in fairy tales and gentle promises. But reality had been different. Some people had turned away from her after her world changed. Others had admired her from a distance, but never stepped close enough to know her. She had hidden her feelings behind work, filling every hour with meetings, deals, and goals. But tonight, in this hall of glowing chandeliers and soft music, the silence around her table felt louder than anything she had faced before. The waiter came by to refill her glass. He smiled kindly and she gave a polite nod in return. When he left, she folded her hands in her lap and lowered her eyes. For a moment, she wondered if she should leave. No one would notice if she slipped out quietly. Yet, no one would ask why she had gone early. Yet something inside her held her back. A small voice told her to stay, to wait, though she did not know what for. As the music grew softer and the lights warmed, Olivia took a deep breath. She tried to push the sadness away and remind herself of her strength. She was used to being alone, and she had learned how to live with it. Still, her heart whispered a question she could not silence. Was there anyone in this world who would see her not as the CEO in a wheelchair, but as a woman who still wanted love? The thought stayed with her as she sat under the glittering chandeliers, her eyes on the dance floor, not knowing that her night was about to change in a way she had never imagined. Ethan Miller entered the wedding hall with his little daughter Lily holding his hand. He wore a simple gray shirt with rolled sleeves and dark jeans. He was not dressed like the other men in suits, but he carried himself with quiet strength. His life had been shaped by hard days, and it showed in the lines on his face, but there was also kindness in his eyes. Lily wore a lavender dress, and in her arms, she carried a stuffed bunny that she never let go of. Ethan looked around, guiding Lily to their table. The hall was bright with golden chandeliers, and the tables were filled with guests who laughed and talked with ease. For a moment, he felt out of place, as if he did not belong in this shining world. Most people here seemed carefree, but Ethan lived each day with the heavy memory of loss. He had lost his wife years ago, and since then, he had lived for Lily. She was his reason for every choice he made, the light that kept him going. Lily tugged on his hand as they reached their seats. She climbed onto the chair and placed her bunny in front of her, as if the toy needed its own seat too. Ethan smiled at her small action. Even in this grand room, her innocent ways made everything seem lighter. He sat beside her, watching the joy around them. Music played softly in the background. Couples danced, and families shared stories. As he looked across the hall, his eyes stopped on a woman sitting alone. She wore a white blazer and sat in a wheelchair near the edge of the dance floor. She looked elegant and strong, yet there was a quiet sadness in her expression. Ethan noticed how she smiled politely when others passed by, but her smile faded quickly when no one was watching. Something about her presence caught his attention. Lily followed his gaze. She saw the woman too, and leaned closer to her father. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Why is the pretty lady sitting all by herself?" Ethan paused. He wanted to answer, but no words came. He only watched the woman in silence. He had known loneliness, and he could see it in her eyes. He did not know her story, but he felt it carried weight. Lily picked up her bunny and hugged it. "She looks sad," she said softly. Children had a way of seeing truth without needing many words. Ethan nodded slowly. He felt a pull inside him, a small voice that told him he could not ignore what he saw. He tried to turn his attention back to the table, but his eyes kept returning to her. The woman seemed to be looking at the dance floor, yet she looked as though she was far away, lost in thoughts she could not share. Ethan felt something stir inside him, something he had not felt in a long time. It was not pity, but recognition. He knew what it was like to feel alone in a room full of people. Lily leaned her head against his arm. "Daddy, maybe we can talk to her," she said with the simple honesty of a child. Ethan looked down at his daughter. Her words struck him. He had taught Lily to be kind, but now her kindness was teaching him to be brave. He glanced once more at the woman in the wheelchair. He felt a quiet determination rising within him. He did not know her name, her story, or her pain, but he knew that sometimes a small step could change everything. As he sat there with Lily's hand in his, Ethan decided he would not let the night end without finding a way to reach her. The music played on, and the hall shone with beauty. But for Ethan, the night had taken a new meaning. The music in the hall changed to a softer tune. Couples stepped onto the dance floor, moving closer as the lights grew warmer. Olivia Carter sat still at her table, trying to hide the heaviness in her chest. She told herself she was used to moments like this, but tonight it was harder to pretend. The voices and laughter around her only reminded her of how silent her own table was. Ethan Miller watched her from across the room, could feel his heart pushing him forward, yet his feet remained in place. He had not spoken to a stranger in this way for years. Since his wife passed away, he had only spoken to people about work, about raising Lily, about daily life. But he had not spoken to someone who stirred something deep in him. Lily noticed her father's silence. She tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, go ask her." Ethan looked down at his daughter, surprised by her courage. She was only a child, yet she had no fear in saying what she felt. He leaned closer to her and asked, "Ask her what?" Lily smiled, holding her bunny close. "Ask her to dance," she said. Her voice was small, but the words felt large in Ethan's heart. For a long moment, he hesitated. He worried that the woman might reject him, that she might see his words as pity instead of kindness. But then he looked at her again and saw the way she kept her eyes on the dance floor, as if she wanted to be part of it, but would never step forward. That was when Ethan made his choice. He stood up and held Lily's hand. Together they walked slowly across the hall. Each step made Ethan's heart beat harder. He had faced many challenges in life, but this moment felt heavier than any business deal or problem he had solved. He was not just walking toward a stranger, he was walking toward a possibility that frightened him and gave him hope at the same time. Olivia noticed movement in the corner of her eye. She turned slightly and saw a man approaching with a little girl. The man looked strong, though his eyes were gentle. The child beside him had golden hair tied with a ribbon, and she carried a small bunny. They stopped in front of her table, and for the first time in a long while, Olivia felt nervous. Ethan bent a little, so his voice would not sound too sharp. He looked at Olivia, and without hesitation, he spoke. "Ow! Will you be my partner?" The words struck Olivia with surprise. She had been asked many things before, but never this. In her world, people asked about profits, about deals, about plans for the future. But no one had asked her something so simple, and yet so deep. For a second, she thought she had misheard him. She searched his face for signs of pity, but there were none. His eyes held only sincerity. Lily smiled and hugged her bunny tighter. She looked at Olivia as if waiting for her to say yes. Olivia's heart raced. She wanted to answer, but fear rose inside her. What if people stared at her on the dance floor? What if she could not keep up? What if this was only an act of kindness and nothing more? Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked down at her hands resting on her lap. Her chest felt heavy, torn between the walls she had built and the quiet desire that lived within her. For years she had told herself she did not need moments like this. But right now, With this man and his child standing before her, she felt the weight of her loneliness like never before. The music carried on. Guests laughed and talked, unaware of the silent storm at Olivia's table. Ethan did not rush her, simply waited, his daughter by his side, his hands steady, his voice soft but clear. The question lingered in the air, not as a demand, but as an offering. Olivia lifted her eyes again. She met his gaze and felt something she had not felt in years. It was not pity, it was not judgment, it was an open door. Her heart beat faster as she tried to decide if she was ready to walk through it. Olivia's breath caught in her chest. She looked at Ethan and then at Lily, who stood with her bunny pressed against her dress. The music swayed gently through the hall, and the glow of the chandeliers seemed to rest only on this small corner where they stood. Olivia wanted to say yes, but the word felt trapped inside her throat. Her mind filled with worries. She imagined people staring if she wheeled onto the dance floor. She imagined whispers and pity hidden behind polite smiles. She had spent years guarding herself against those moments, hiding her pain behind her title and her strength. She feared letting herself be vulnerable in front of so many people. Ethan seemed to understand her silence. He did not rush her. Instead, he smiled gently, and in his voice there was patience. "Only if you want to," he said. His words were simple, but they carried respect. He was not asking out of charity. He was giving her the choice. Olivia looked into his eyes again and saw no trace of judgment. She saw only sincerity and kindness. Something inside her began to soften. She turned her gaze toward Lily, who was watching her with innocent hope. The little girl gave a shy nod as if to say she believed Olivia belonged with them. That simple gesture broke through Olivia's fear. She let out a slow breath and whispered, "All right." Ethan's smile widened, not with triumph, but with relief. He held out his hand, steady and respectful. Olivia placed her hand in his, her fingers trembling slightly, but the warmth of his touch steadied her. He guided her chair toward the dance floor, and for the first time that evening, Olivia felt the eyes of the room on her. Yet this time, it did not feel as sharp as she had feared. The music wrapped around them as they reached the center of the floor. The couples moved aside, creating space without being asked. Ethan stood close, his presence calm and steady. He placed one hand gently over hers and began to guide her in a slow rhythm. At first, Olivia felt stiff, her shoulders tight, her body tense. But as Ethan moved with ease, she began to loosen. The chair shifted lightly as he guided her, and soon the motion felt almost like floating. Lily spun nearby, her lavender dress twirling as she giggled. Guests began to notice the small, family-like picture unfolding before them. Some smiled, some clapped softly to the beat, and others simply watched with admiration.
Olivia's heart pounded, but not from fear.
For the first time in many years, she felt seen not as a CEO in a wheelchair, but as a woman sharing a dance. Ethan's steady gaze anchored her. Every turn of the chair, every small step of his feet carried a message that she was not alone in this moment. Her mind replayed the doubts she had carried for so long. She had believed no one would ever look at her with such openness again. Yet here was a man who did, and here was a child who accepted her without question. The walls she had built began to crumble, piece by piece, as the music continued. When the song ended, the hall filled with soft applause. Olivia felt her cheeks warm, but she did not lower her head. For once, she allowed herself to take in the moment. She looked at Ethan and whispered, "Thank you." Her voice shook, but the gratitude was real. Ethan gave a small nod. "You belong here," he said quietly, as if it were the simplest truth in the world. Olivia's chest tightened, not with pain, but with something she had thought was lost to her: hope. The music shifted into another gentle song, and Olivia stayed on the dance floor with Ethan by her side. The lights above glowed warmly, casting a soft shine on the guests. Couples swayed close to each other, and children spun in happy circles. But Olivia noticed none of that. Her attention was fixed on the way Ethan looked at her, steady and calm, as if she mattered more than the crowd. He guided her movements slowly, never rushing, letting her find the rhythm at her own pace. At first she felt nervous, but as the moments passed, her shoulders relaxed. Her chair moved smoothly as Ethan's hand rested lightly over hers. The sound of the music mixed with the sound of Lily's laughter, as the little girl spun with her stuffed bunny clutched tight. The sight made Olivia smile in a way she had not smiled in years. The guests began to watch. Heads turned toward them, but for once Olivia did not shrink back. She saw admiration in the faces around her, not pity. Some clapped to the music, others whispered kind words to each other. She felt as though the room had shifted, as though the usual sharp edges of judgment had softened into something gentle. Her heart beat faster. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen in such a light. Not as the powerful CEO who led meetings and made deals. Not as the woman in the wheelchair who carried silent battles, but as someone who could dance, laugh, and belong. She let the music carry her, and with every turn, her fears grew smaller. Ethan leaned a little closer, his voice low. "You're doing amazing," he said. His words were simple, but they made her heart race. She lifted her eyes to his and saw no trace of pity, only respect and warmth. For years she had been afraid of this kind of closeness, but standing here with him, it felt natural. Lily stopped twirling and ran back to her father's side. She leaned against his arm, smiling at Olivia. "You look like a princess," she said with childlike honesty. Olivia's eyes filled with sudden emotion. She had not been called that since she was a little girl, back before her life had changed. She reached out and touched Lily's small hand.
"Thank you,"
she whispered. The little girl grinned and hugged her bunny tightly again before skipping off toward the edge of the floor. Olivia watched her go, then turned her gaze back to Ethan. There was a question rising in her heart, one she was afraid to ask, but she kept it inside for now. The music slowed, and the song ended. Applause rose again, and Ethan guided Olivia gently back toward her table. People smiled as they passed, some giving nods of approval. Olivia felt a warmth spreading in her chest. For the first time in years, she had not just been present at a wedding. She had been part of it. When they reached her table, Ethan did not step away at once. He stayed close, his presence steady. "Thank you for saying yes," he told her. Olivia lowered her eyes for a moment, then met his gaze. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But I am glad I did." Ethan gave a quiet smile. "So am I." The night carried on around them, with laughter, music, and celebration filling every corner of the hall. But for Olivia and Ethan, the world had narrowed to this small table, this quiet exchange, and the feeling that something new had begun between them. Neither of them said it out loud, but both knew their lives had shifted. A single choice had changed everything. Later in the evening, the hall grew calmer. The loud cheers of the wedding guests softened as people sat at their tables with plates of food and glasses of wine. The music played in the background, gentle and steady. Olivia sat across from Ethan and Lily, for the first time in many years. She felt like she was not invisible at such a gathering. Lily was busy drawing shapes on a napkin with a small pen she had found in her father's pocket. She giggled as she showed her bunny the crooked stars she had drawn. Ethan watched her for a moment with a soft smile, before turning his gaze back to Olivia. There was a quiet pause between them, filled with words unsaid. Olivia broke the silence. "Your daughter is sweet," she said. Ethan nodded. "She is my whole world." His voice carried both pride and weight, as if behind those words rested a story of pain. Olivia sensed it and waited, giving him space. He looked at her directly then, his eyes steady. "I lost my wife 5 years ago," he said. The words came out plain, but they carried a heaviness that filled the space between them. "Since then, it has just been me and Lily. She was very young when it happened. Some days I still do not know how I managed, but somehow we found a way." Olivia's chest tightened. She did not interrupt. She listened, her hands folded together on the table. Ethan continued, "I thought life would always feel empty after that. I worked, I cared for Lily, and I tried to be strong for her, but I never let anyone else in. I told myself I did not need anyone. Tonight, though, I looked at you sitting alone, and I knew that feeling." Olivia felt it in your eyes. Olivia felt her throat tighten. She had not expected him to speak with such honesty. She lowered her gaze for a moment before answering. "I built a company. I made myself strong. But it was easier to fill my time with work than to face how alone I was. People see the wheelchair and they stop at that. They forget I am still just a woman who wants to be loved, who wants to be seen. I learned to hide it." Her voice wavered, but she did not look away. Ethan nodded slowly. "I don't see you as less," he said. "I see someone strong, yes, but also someone real, You do not have to hide from me. The words struck Olivia deeply. She felt something inside her shift, as if a door long closed had been opened. For so long she had built walls to protect herself from pain, yet here was a man gently asking her to put those walls down. Lily looked up from her napkin and beamed. "You two are talking a lot," she said with a playful grin. Both adults laughed softly at her timing, the heaviness of the moment lightened by her innocent joy. Olivia glanced at Ethan again. In his eyes she saw not only kindness, but also a truth that matched her own. They were two people who had carried their battles alone for too long. Now, sitting together at this wedding table, their stories had woven into one thread. As the night went on, the music rose and fell, but Olivia no longer felt the urge to leave early, no longer felt like an outsider looking in. For the first time in many years, she felt connected. And that connection came not from her success, not from appearances, but from honesty shared between two souls who understood each other. The wedding drew closer to its end. Guests were slowly leaving the dance floor, some gathering near the doors, others staying behind for one last drink or conversation. The glow of the chandelier softened, giving the hall a warm and quiet air. Olivia sat with Ethan and Lily, and for the first time in many years, she felt she did not want the night to end. Lily leaned against her father's arm, tired but happy. Her bunny rested on her lap as her eyes grew heavy. Ethan placed his arm gently around her, his protective nature showing in every small action. Olivia watched them and felt something stir inside her. It was not just admiration, it was the sense of a family, something she had not dared to imagine for herself. Ethan looked at Olivia with a calm expression. "Thank you for tonight," he said. His words were simple, but they carried meaning. Olivia shook her head lightly. "No, thank you. Reminded me what it feels like to be seen." I had forgotten. There was a pause. Their eyes held each other, not with the nervousness of strangers, but with the comfort of people who had shared their truths. Ethan reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. "We would love to see you again," he said. His voice was steady, almost quiet, but filled with hope. Olivia felt her heart race. She had not expected such an invitation, yet deep inside, she had wished for it. She looked down at his hand over hers, warm and steady, then lifted her gaze back to him. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from something she had long believed was lost to her. Hope returned, stronger than she imagined. "I would like that," she whispered. Her voice was soft but clear. Ethan's smile grew, small and genuine. Lily stirred and blinked her sleepy eyes open. She looked at Olivia and grinned. "You should come see us," she said, half awake but full of trust. Olivia laughed gently, the sound carrying lightness she had not felt in years. "I will," she answered. The music slowed to its final song, and the bride and groom shared their last dance. Guests clapped and cheered, but Olivia hardly noticed. For her, the real moment of the night was not on the dance floor. It was here, at this simple table, with a man and his daughter who had opened a door she thought was closed forever. As people began to leave, Ethan stood and lifted Lily into his arms. He turned to Olivia and said, "Can I walk you out?" She nodded, and he guided her chair gently toward the exit. They moved through the crowd together, no longer strangers, but something more. Outside, the night air was cool and fresh. The stars above shone brightly, scattered across the dark sky. Olivia looked up for a moment, feeling the quiet beauty of it. Ethan stood beside her, Lily resting against his shoulder, her bunny dangling in her small hand. There was no need for grand speeches, no need for promises too heavy to keep. What mattered was the simple truth that they had found each other. Olivia felt it in her heart. Ethan felt it too. As they reached the path leading to the parking area, Ethan leaned closer and said, "This is not the end. It feels like a beginning." Olivia smiled, her eyes shining. "Yes," she said softly, "a beginning." They stood there for a moment under the night sky. Three souls who had been broken in different ways, now connected by something stronger. The wedding had ended, but their story had only just started.